Man, my man Jesse, looking rested and never been bested. How you feeling, brother?
Just like we were just covering in pre-production, bro. Like since I started with this contract, it's been just go, 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 go between all of the onboarding and then it's very intense dealing with an entire team of folks and changing their behaviors. So it's like last week I was literally thinking like, yo, I am fucking exhausted, bro. Like absolutely exhausted. And it was just kind of like, yeah, I'm tired, but we got shit that we got to get done. So we finna keep it moving like we always keep it moving. Well,
Yes, sir.
that project wrapped up in Raleigh, and this week I'm off in between projects. So I'm not off because I still got all the other things that it's still things that got to get done, but that's not
Mhm.
10 hours every day that's brought back. So I was telling you, Earl, how it just feels so good to just be able to sleep. Like on Friday, I think I slept like all day long and and it just felt great. Like when I was doing the consulting thing before, I couldn't wait for Friday so that I could get back to Atlanta to link with my peoples for the weekend. Now I'm excited to rest and re-energize. You know what I'm saying? Reset the spirit.
That's dope, bro. It sounds like you are living that parable of purpose. Like to paraphrase it, is it's essentially that you are so tied into your purpose and you are so tied into your goals that you work with such a ferocity and such intensity that you can't wait to go to sleep. And then you sleep to rest, and as soon as your eyes open, you're leaping out of bed because you can't wait to get back to your purpose. So that's phenomenal, man. I love hearing that. It's really inspiring. And I want to go ahead and just bring out the disclaimer right now. We'll do our intros and then we got so much to talk about. Like, man, the world be worlding, my guy. The world be worlding. So, guys, this is the asset class. And as you see, we get into some real actionable information very quickly. We want to let you know that we highly, highly encourage you to work with licensed professionals with a track record of success, bonded in nature if need be. Always, always, always do your own research because as you learn more, each one, reach one, teach one, because that's how we learn and grow as a community.
Already.
Jesse, man, I'm glad you got some sleep, bro. I feel like I haven't been sleeping at all. I've been on the crackhead energy, man. Just building the biz, like going through some of these legal parameters and making sure everything's straight with contracts, but also feeling inspiration. And one of the big things that we were going to talk about last week,
But hold
just
on
to
a second. Hold on a second though, bro. Like this is a part of the grind that we don't talk enough about, which is when we get on a plane and they going over the safety briefing, they always tell us to put our mask on first. And that's for a reason. Because when shit is just going completely left and my intent is to rescue my neighbor without first rescuing myself, now I endanger both of our lives because although my intent was positive to serve my neighbor, by not serving myself, that last bit of air that could have been preserved to me putting my mask on to be of greater service, I didn't get that last breath. And now that that last bout of service that I intended to deliver to this world and to our ecosystem is robbed because didn't take care of oneself first. Earl, what you mentioned there was, you don't feel like you got your right sleep. And I think that that's an important point to foot stomp on a little bit, because I know when it comes to my grind and my priorities for what it is that I'm building, oftentimes I'm at the bottom of that list. And it can't be that way. Nothing about that is sustainable. And the onus is on us to hold ourselves accountable to striking the right balance between the ambitions and the visions that fuel us versus the humane elements that we all are susceptible to if we're not taking care of ourselves. So the grind is always going to be the grind. And as I'm saying what I'm saying, believe me, I'm talking to myself more than I'm talking to anybody else. It is vitally critical that we are prioritizing our star player, making sure that we are taking care of oneself.
Bro, I love that. With the pod, we'll often pause because we'll just go. We have so many bars because we really do this and we do it multiple times every day to make sure that we're not skipping out on those little jewels in the meantime and in between time. And a small thing can be a big thing, 100%. So I really appreciate that, brother. I've been in between a mix of a little bit maniacal and stressed all at the same time. It's almost like building a business, I know all business owners can relate because there's a range of emotions. And one thing that keeps popping up over and over again is to remember that, I heard a therapist once say, you are the house and emotions are visitors. It's okay if they come, allow them to leave, don't allow them to live there and start redecorating the house. So
Yeah,
we got to
100%. And like it takes even another level of intentionality just to further foot stomp and reinforce the analogy that you're making there. There are now all of these protective laws in place for, if you allow somebody to be in your home for a certain period of time, you can't just put them out. So, it's a whole nother level of intentionality that kind of gets piled on to the point that you made there, right? Like we really, really, really got to safeguard our own best, like our health, our sense of being, and to be intentional about it, truly, 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 because that inhabitant that you can't just put out can be masked as ambition, and that ambition can become our own detriment, and that's not where we need to be as the producers, not the consumers in this economy, but as the producers within this economy. Not having that balance is a fool's errand, and it ultimately results into hustling backwards. So I don't know why that's so heavy on my spirit this evening, but it is. And I know that we don't talk about it enough as the driven producers in society.
No, that's real. And I love that with this channel, we're talking about things in real time. So it's not from theory, it's not from Pinterest. It's what you're going through because you are, and then you sign a contract with a company to work with their clients, and you're doing such a great job that people want to keep you on longer than the original. So they're cool with giving you 20, 30, $40,000 a week because the processes that you're creating, the lifestyle, the success, the the unattainable things are becoming attained. by your mentorship. So it's so dope to see you creating that, but we can't ever skip out on you're also creating you. you know, both, Michelangelo and the chapel at the same time. So it's dope to have these meta experiences and meta conversations. And the thing that's been heavy on my mind, especially since last week, China, as some of our leaders would call it, and how the global economics game is shifting in so many different ways. And we see it leaking into many different factors. So one of my favorite athletes on the planet is Steph Curry, Steph the Chef Curry, aka Mr. Can't Get a Whistle, because the refs show him no love. I just saw a stat the other day that he's made 100 more threes than he. That's crazy. They just won't give that man a whistle. But I guess when you shoot the ball like he does, if he shot 6 or 7 free throws a game, yeah, a lot less LeBron shoes are getting sold and worn. Now, the interesting thing, have you seen this new deal that he just signed?
No, not at all.
Okay, so Steph has 2 deals going on simultaneously. His NBA deal it's set in stone already. I believe he signed a 10-year, and it's been growing each year, and that's how they structured the payout so that they could win immediately and have more capital to bring better players on the team. Because basketball is a business on top of being a sport. And it's gone from the 30s in millions of dollars per year to $62 million per year. So his contract is just paying out this money, which is awesome. He deserves it all. When he came to the franchise, I believe the whole enterprise was worth $200 million. Now it's worth roughly $3 billion since he's joined the team. Talk about having a star player change the culture of your team. Now, at the same time, he's been through this shoe debacle his whole career. You and I have talked about shoes. We talked about VA and how you got down and how you were coming out with that shit on and how y'all were rocking things. So I know you know your sneaks. It was interesting, because Steph started off wanting to go with Nike, as most black kids would want to. If they grew up and they're in our age group, they're somewhere between 45 and maybe 29 at this point. You grew up seeing Nike as the ish because Jordan, because of soccer players, because of hockey players, track stars, Michael Johnson, all the baddest dudes on the planet and baddest girls on the planet were Nike. Well, Nike dropped the ball. And it's so funny, man. I think there's so many lessons in this little snippet that I'm giving us. The guy that was in charge of recruiting Steph Curry to Nike, his name is Nico Barnes. And Nico Barnes Harris. And Nico Harris dropped the ball 100% with Steph. Because one, he didn't know his name. He was calling him Steven. Strike one. Strike two, every good business owner knows when you need capital or you're trying to exit on your business, you create a deck. And that deck is your presentation. It's how you show the enterprise value that you've built into whatever you're doing so someone else can understand it in a simple manner. And then you could start your discussions and your debate. They didn't even have Steph's face in the deck. They still have Kevin Durant's. So it lets you know they were just recycling the presentation they did for Kevin Durant because they really wanted him. So of course, I know it's nuts. It's nuts. So then, of course he doesn't go there. He goes to Under Armour. His ankles get healthier. All of a sudden, Under Armour has him as the MVP. They have the baseball MVP, and they have Tom Brady all at the same time. So their stock was going to the ceiling. They were selling left and right. And I think this ties in so well to exactly what you do with building systems and helping people recognize, the cost of goods sold and what profitability really is. Because they were outselling every single brand, but they were reinvesting that money poorly, and they lost hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm going to toss it to you here in just a second, Jesse. One of the things that was interesting, especially in the Black community, we will hear you always take equity. You never ever take the cash, take the equity. It's always going to be more. There is no always. There is no hard, fast rule when we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, because they signed him to a lifetime deal. And I'm like air quotes, because clearly he's leaving the brand. It was roughly like 435, $470 million for this lifetime deal. He took it almost all in equity in Under Armour, because that's what Tom Brady did as well. Since that time period, because of poor investments and not understanding their end user, not understanding sneaker culture, the stock has dropped 75% since then. That's crazy. So his $470 million is floating between 48 and $70 million. Hopefully he had some good people around him and he was able to, short some positions, make some money, and exit wisely. That's what I would hope for him. But I want to toss it to you at that point, because we have this company and they're making a bunch of sales. They're outselling all of their competitors and they're losing money. Jesse, as a business coach, what's the first thing that pops into your head hearing this?
Knowing your value and charging twice with all taxes included, rather those be local, municipal, state, federal, like know your value. So, in other words, when I think about a Steph Curry going into an Under Armour deal, up front, we need to know how Under Armour is performing before we attach Steph Curry's name to anything, so that anything that ticks above what their averages have always been in performance, we can attribute that directly back to Steph Curry, his brand, and the visibility that he's brought to the Under Armour brand, which gives us the ability to quantify that value that's been delivered. If we know that by exposing, for every 300 people that we expose to the Under Armour brand, 250 of them are going to purchase something, rather it be shoes, socks, sports apparel, or what have you. 250 of them are going to make a purchase. And of the 250, each the average ticket is going to be $115. Well, now we know the dollar amount that comes with bringing 250 people on as new customers. And if Steph is bringing on the set and putting the brand in front of that set of eyes, that amount of sets of eyes, then the math just works itself out. So if Steph doesn't understand his value to begin with, and he's just signing with whatever that's available to him, then that already within itself is hustling backwards. So that's the first side of it. The other side of it is when we start talking about brand impact, that shit goes both ways. So Steph Curry's impact, the Steph Curry's brand is kind of associated with like silent assassin, like effectiveness, efficiency. When you put Steph Curry in the game, the boy's going to deliver. Like that's his brand. When Steph, as a businessman, is not intentional about understanding how well that his connection to Under Armour is resonating with his fan base, at a certain point, that starts to deteriorate Steph Curry's brand as a whole, because now we got this thing that if it's not producing, and I'm not saying that it did or didn't, but I'm just saying as a partnership, we need to know our value going in, but then we also need to understand how that connection is actually materializing. Because in an instance in which the Under Armour brand is not actually connecting with Steph Curry's brand, his established brand and his established audience, then the question becomes, is this partnership an asset or a liability to Steph Curry's brand? And if it's not connecting properly, then at a certain point, it becomes a liability and it starts to bring down the value of Steph Curry's brand. So understanding the numbers truly, so that we're not moving off of emotions, is where my mind goes when I hear what it was that you laid out. How you process that?
I think these athletes need to do more research before they sign their name on the dotted line. We are not in the bullish of bull markets that we've been in. You know, for a lot of people, they're saying America's on the decline in many different facets, where we're looking at our stock market, we're looking at our real estate market, we're looking at a credit crunch, we're looking at commercial real estate. We're looking at a lot of different things that are not performing as they should. We're looking at quality of life, we're looking at inflation. So when they're in the world of, you know, when it's 2014 and just everything is going straight up, it's almost hard pressed to find a company where you get this much equity in it and you perform like he does and you don't come out better than you would, you know, doing a ton of forensic. So like, let's say if he went with Adidas or, you know, one of these other brands, he would have saw a strong return with almost any of the brands. But that's not the economy we live in. We got to look at fundamentals. We have to look at the vision of the COO. I believe Under Armour has had 5 COOs in the last 7 years. That is not a good sign. So that leads Steph to decide, look, it's time to move. And it was interesting to see all of these different probability charts, to see the it's certain platforms in which you can bet on. I'm not going to name any of those because I don't promote that kind of stuff. And they were all wrong. You know, the very last thing that was suspected was for him to go to Li-Ning. Li-Ning is one of the largest brands in China. They make some of the best quality shoes. It's one of the big 3 in China. And China has been moving away from using American and European brands, because before, that's when you were popping, when you had some real Nikes and you knew it was real. So they would spend the extra money to wear it. Nike's quality has gone down over the last 10 years. And I know personally, I used to love to train in Nike. And then I have 2 or 3 different pairs of shoes where I Fred Flintstone that. My foot goes through the shoe while I'm training. Unacceptable.
Right.
I don't wear Nikes for training.
I went to the mall in Raleigh on some like nostalgia type shit, because going to the, like, I remember I was thinking about this during the week. These kids ain't gonna never understand what it felt like to go to the mall, pick out the fresh kicks that you getting ready to wear to the skating rink, and like you go to the skating ring with the fresh kicks, with the beeper, the cell phone, your own skates, and a gold chain and some new kicks. Like this was before Jeezy was ever a thing. I didn't know what a Jeezy was, but you best believe, with a beeper on my hip, a cell phone, and the cell phone was a brick. Like that it was a huge, the cell phone was fucking huge. And the only entertainment that you got out of it, outside of being able to communicate with whoever that you're communicating with, was the game Snake. So like you got the
take them back, Jesse. Take them back.
Oh man. I done lost the point that I was making in total. But
No, it's powerful. It seems like you were leading on to the feeling, the zeitgeist around having the fit, having the Nikes, having everything in the culture. That's
and
not
they
what these
lost
kids are
that.
about.
Like Nike fumbled that. And a lot of brands fumble that. And that's where it comes back to the numbers, bro. Like the numbers, we have to be more disciplined when it comes to statistics because we can feel that we got that shit on. I know that feeling that I had that I described with all of that. Like I felt like Jeezy, but for Jeezy was I didn't know what a fucking Jeezy was. Jeezy wasn't a thing. But I know what that feeling is.
And they lost it.
And
That's the
and they
thing.
yes, they lost it.
Just because a brand's on top now doesn't mean it's going to be on top forever. Just because a producer's on top now doesn't mean that they're going to be on top for forever. Things change, the market changes, people change, trends change. So you have to ebb and flow.
Based on the
Yes,
data. Yes.
the only thing constant in business is change. So with Li-Ning, Li-Ning is huge. And I think his timing is so smart. I think it's such a well researched move from Steph. One, if we were to guess what currency was gaining the most strength the most quickly, we would think about China and their currency. If we thought about the nation who is creating the most allies and those allies having the best assets, so uranium, palladium, platinum, gold, electricity, real estate, people that will take Chinese debt on to be able to expand their economy, we're looking at China. If we're looking at a country that has completely flipped the game, like this was one thing nobody saw coming when we had lockdown.
They even refined the crude oil, which obviously has become a major point of emphasis. So I wanted to get your read on this because when you first started talking about China, my mind immediately just kind of went to what we are facing right now as a global economy. And we know that the supply chain of crude oil, the raw product itself, has been disrupted for months now. Like we're talking at this point, we're talking about billions of barrels of oil that have been taken out of the traditional market. But then we had like an infusion of barrels that had been kind of sitting and waiting to be released. But still, what we know definitively is that the volume of oil being produced has been reduced over the course of this war. Yet the gas prices are not reflecting that right now. So like when I logically just kind of think through it on just the real simplistic terms of if we know that it takes this amount of crude oil in order for the world to function, and the amount being produced has been brought from here down to here, there is now a gap between here and there that's not being filled. If we know that we need that amount of crude oil for the world to function, and that amount has just been taken out of the mix altogether. When we start talking about just the simplistic concepts of supply and demand, which is not as simplistic as I may be alluding to it, but just the simplistic idea of there has to be a demand for the supply, and there also has to be a supply for the demand, like they feed one another. By removing the supply from the ecosystem altogether, the demand had already been solidified. Like it had already been determined that we need this amount of crude oil for the world to function. And now we've all of a sudden removed that from the supply chain. How is it possible for fuel costs to continue to be low when we know that a significant portion of the demand has just been supply has just been removed from the system, when if anything the demand has likely increased when we're talking about all of the energy that's required for AI. So
summertime, we normally see the demand for gas go way up because kids are doing more activities, families are doing activities, road trips, so many things happen in the summer. So we definitely have a higher demand and we have a lower supply. So it's like, how can the price be here? It's almost like it's artificially set by a group, or what would you call that? Possibly a cartel of people buying, selling, and producing at certain levels to produce a certain outcome. You know, when we look at oil, and I think back to John D. Rockefeller, how Standard Oil got split up into all these different companies, where we get Phillips, where we get Exxon, we get BP, we get all these different companies that are split from his gigantic monopoly. And then he makes more money at the end of the day. That's where his wealth hyperinflated and he became the wealthiest that he ever was when that happened. In the same way, there are really only like 7 oil producers in the world that are worth mentioning. What are the chances that those 7 producers know how to produce oil in a certain fashion? For example, I'll give a more concrete example. When we were in lockdown and no one was driving and demand fell through the floor, we saw oil futures hit a negative number. It was like negative $58 per barrel. And yet we saw the price at the pump still like $2.70, $2.45. How? Well, at the same time, we saw Exxon, we saw the Emirates, and we saw other factions start producing millions of dollars worth of oil every single day. And their biggest problem became where to store it, because there was no one to buy it. They were producing the oil just to be able to shift those numbers, just to make sure that the price did not fall too low. And with that, you know, we very quickly saw these people make some of the greatest profits they've ever made in oil. And then people will say, like, well, I don't understand why the prices are so high. How can you have record profits in a commodity and not expect it to affect the end user, which is us consumers? So when I look at this, it really ties into everything I was saying initially. We have a great exposure right now of how, say, fake, because it has real effects, but how fabricated and manipulated these markets are. You and I both know, because we sat in a room where we looked at sourcing products directly from China, because as we've learned over the last 6 years, most European goods and many, many American goods have the majority of the raw materials and beginning of the manufacture process happen in China. Why? Because China has they're very loose with their human their human rights when it comes to labor. So there is a huge shift in power, which creates hyper profitability. How a Nike shoe can cost $2 to be made and it's sold for $295, you know, and they get someone else to pay the shipping, because that's a whole different part of the game. But we got to see all these things and we got to say, why does a closet cost $20,000 to get this closet put in when all the raw materials might cost $2,000 to have a really nice wood. Same thing when it comes to the furniture. So it's been amazing to see the procurement game and people that are in procurement to say, hey, what do you want? I will get you very high quality things for a half, a third, a quarter, an eighth, a tenth of the price. And guess what? It's made in the exact same factory as a Margiela, as a, I could throw a whole bunch of different brands allegedly. Don't sue me. But, the Chinese people said, hey, we make all your goods. They had this spat with Louis Vuitton, and Louis Vuitton said, no, you don't. And they said, show us your factories. And then Louis Vuitton said, sacre bleu. Like they they just had to shut up. So we're at this point, bro, and I was so excited to be able to talk about this, where people are really thinking about value versus price for the first time. Because the vast majority of Americans solely buy things on cost. And then if they have a good experience, they will retroactively go back and say that the thing was valuable. Whereas now, before they spend the dollars, they're doing the calculation to say, hey, this price does not make sense for this product or service. It doesn't correlate to me. So I'm not going to be engaging in it. And, this, tying it back to Steph Curry, this is where he has so much space to expand. So he's getting paid in multiple different currencies, regardless of what happens in the American market. When the last time he went to China to visit, there was a whole stadium of people waiting to greet him. It's a different kind of fandom out there. I got homies that play ball in Japan right now, and they're like, look, as soon as I finish this league, I want to go to China. You get treated different there. You almost get treated like sports royalty. So he's putting himself in a different tier there. He also got something else that Under Armour and Nike refused to give him. And that was autonomy to be able to sign his own athletes. He was hanging out with some of the best female athletes in the world saying, look, I would love to sign you. He put the pressure on Under Armour to be able to sign these women. He's like, you don't understand. Female basketball is about to explode. Female golf is about to explode. Female volleyball, all of these sports are at that point. They didn't listen to him. And Nike went and signed all those athletes. I think that was the last straw. And the other funny thing about Nico Harris, not only did he drop the ball there and then was fired from Nike, when he got fired from Nike, he got hired to the Dallas Mavericks, and he was the guy who traded Luka away. So shout out to him for keeping a job. Like, he keeps getting these jobs, bro. He gets some good-ass jobs. But it's so interesting. I want to see what comes of this. I want to see what athletes he signs and what his line looks like. Because he's like, I don't just want to have a basketball shoe. I want to have a whole golf and athleisure line. I want to create Curry brand to be something that outlives me. So that's a great vision to have. And how was he going to do that? At Under Armour, which is going down, Adidas basketball is not doing the greatest. Like, Nike has Anthony Edwards, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and that's just off the top of my head.
The reality, though, is so to watch the whole dad shoes thing actually become a thing, where, when you and I were growing up, it was certain Nikes that didn't matter. Just like it's certain Jordans that don't matter. Like, when you see people wearing certain J's, you're like, you are not of the culture. You know what I'm saying? Like, because those J's don't count. You know what I'm saying? It's like U.S. Polo Association. You know what I'm saying? It's just like that don't. So it don't matter. But I'm saying that to say, to watch how the dad shoes and all that have become a real thing, and now certain Nikes that were not a thing, I know for sure when I was growing up, are now like fashionable, and it's certain New Balances and Asics and all of these different sneakers that they didn't get no burn when I was growing up, and eventually they just became a thing. I'm
Yeah,
saying that to say,
Skechers.
I'm saying
Skechers
that
are
to
the
say,
buttery hotness right now, bro.
bruh,
I,
I'm saying all of that to say, when it comes to Steph Curry and the Under Armour brand, when he on fire and the design is kicking, the shit gonna go. You know what I'm saying? And all of that, it all circles back to the numbers, bro. Like I can't emphasize that enough. We can feel that a design that we put out is gonna go through the moon. Like these shit's about to fly off the racks. The the preliminary data that comes in just from pre-sales, just from like website traffic and all of these other factors that precede someone actually spending money on the shoe itself. All of that data is essential to understanding what type of value is being introduced to the market. When you're not paying attention to that type of shit, then you end up with a dud. And the 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 Under Armour piece is not a huge contributing factor if the shoe is fire. When the shoe is fire, they gonna wear the Under Armours the same way that they wearing the Nikes that didn't matter when I was growing up. The same way that they wearing the Asics that didn't matter when I was growing. Like if people would have showed up with the Asics that's popping now when I was growing up, like they would have been clowned out of the room that they were in, out of the building that they were in, out of the parking lot that they were in, out of the city that like the the level of yo, we about to roast your ass, bro. That has changed. So he could have his shoes popping, they just ain't popping. And that becomes a business analysis because there was a bunch of preceding data that would have let him know that this shit ain't connecting the way that it need to connect. So we either need to program the minds of folks to identify these shoes as being fire, or we need to change the design so that they just connect as being fire. Like all of that, that's all business though. Through the data.
and I think there's a great precedent with the brand because Dwayne Wade was the first to go over there. He was the first great American athlete to go over there. The Way of Wade has been selling like crazy. And it's a hard shoe. I've been thinking about grabbing them because, I started hooping again and their quality. The funny thing is, I'm still wearing my old Stephs right now. I got the Steph Curry 2s. Man, I've been wearing them joints for a minute, but they're holding up. At least Under Armour made a quality shoe because they're still holding up. Because I am definitely heavy, and I put some violent force into them joints, and they're still rocking. But Wave is probably going to be my replacement shoe, and I just cannot wait to see what comes out of this. Because he pretty much had three lanes. Go with one of these established brands. He could have been like the Ball family, create his own brand, or go with an international brand. And I think he made the right decision. And it's going to be interesting to see what other assets they allow him to acquire. What are the sub terms of his deal as they come out? How they treat the athletes that he signs on there. And if there's going to be any pettiness again, because I want to say in 2024 or 2022, Li-Ning were banned from being sold in the United States for a little bit. And at that point in time, that's right as we're rocking, COVID world. That would have been a major deficit to have that happen. Now, China has probably one of the strongest economies in the world where it doesn't matter as much. Everything matters. The data always matters as long as it's timely. But it really interesting stuff going on, brother. And it leads us back to, I want to say, episode 8, where we talked about Apple. And we were talking about how Apple was going backwards and how Apple created their own competitors. Because, and this is like a Huey Freeman moment. It's like, it all comes back to Reagan. Reagan's the devil. Decided he did a bunch of wild stuff as a president. He broke up social programs that were working, so kids didn't have after school programs and whatnot. So then they're just out on the streets, and then increased police forces. Like, he did a lot of different things, called foreign dictators, all kinds of racial slurs in the White House. He did a lot of wild stuff, but two of the things that I think carry the most weight, maybe it's 3. The first being, he allowed big corporations like the Walmarts of the world to compete against local grocers and farmers, which pushed them out and created food deserts. Simultaneously allowed a lot of workforce to go over to China, start manufacturing things. And at this point in time, this is where people were like, "Oh, it's from Chinese. It's cheap. It's cheaply made."
Do you think that he let them compete with the smaller brands, or that they were just late to the party to regulate it?
He allowed it to happen because there were federal statutes that had pricing in a certain manner, where a Walmart could not price out a local market, a local grocer. He
Those
removed
laws are already
those.
on the books.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, so they existed before his presidency, and he removed those barriers because this is part of that belief that deregulation always leads to profitability, and it doesn't. Sometimes it can. If an industry is over-regulated and it is slowing down the ability for the producer and the consumer, the end user, to be able to get said product or service,
i.e. our housing market. I'm sorry.
No, that's right on point. And as all of these things happen at the same time, they also decide to shift the top marginal tax bracket, because it was around 90% at this point in time. And they bring it down to 70, and then by 1988, they bring it down to 50%. So now CEOs start to shift the conversation of, hey, I have this company, and it's okay if I make 1,000 times more than my employees. And it's wild. At the same time, this is where we see ERISA happen, where employees lose guaranteed pensions, and it goes to a defined benefit type of structure, where it means you have to put your own money up to ensure your own future, and a 401k, which was never designed to do that. So we have all these things that come together and kind of cascade one after the other. And one of the biggest criticisms of Reagan that we see from economists, just purely on a structured number type of conversation, is that the workforce was never retrained from that structural loss that we have, where people were making these smaller things. It's like, okay, it's manufacturing their workers. They could be trained to do something else. And from then, it's been cascading over the decades. So as these large companies start doing this, and they start making hyper profitability, because, some of these companies are literally getting child labor from North Korea, from prisoners in North Korea, from children in other nations that I'll never call them third world, because all third world means is that they didn't support Germany or the United States during World War II. So that carries no weight, because Switzerland is also third world. Like, what are we talking about? Anyways, they've created this situation where they created the monster, where now we have Huawei that makes phones that are better than Apple. How? Because they outsourced all the labor and machinery and tooling and software to China. And then all they had to do was learn the process long enough, start creating their own chips, start creating their own glass, and boom, all of Apple's number one competitors come from China because of this. And we're seeing the same thing happen with Tesla right now. Huawei just dropped a crazy car. Like it's basically if a Maybach and a Tesla had a baby, and it's incredible, bro. The stuff that they're producing, and it is at a fraction of a cost. It's less than $100,000. We're talking about EV charging, where you can charge that thing up in 9 minutes flat, and you can get about 500 miles of range on it. Our electrical vehicles here in the United States only get 240, and because of all the stuff we're doing in tax strategy, I've seen the nuance of the battery capacity that we can do here because we had to go out and get new vendors because Trump kind of changed some legislation to say if you're creating certain products, a percentage of it has to be American made, but he's not putting money towards training people. He's not making loan products to help out companies. He's not making tax credits to help out companies. And he's not retraining people to produce the things that we need. He's just saying, I'm going to tax you if it comes from China. Or for our particular strategy, it won't work and we won't give your clients a tax credit if they use this and it has this amount of stuff from China. So it's kind of wild, man. From the beginning, instead of protecting the United States citizen and laborer by outsourcing, all of this stuff is cascaded. So we have the best watches in the world, where China is winning the art of creating watches. It's called horology. They just won a competition, so they beat the Swiss, and they've created new movements. And there's a whole science to that, which is dope. I just, I'd be rocking my little Casio. They say it is the watch of billionaires and cab drivers. I'm definitely not a cab driver, so maybe one day I'll be a billionaire. So it's kind of wild, bro. So they have the technology to do all these different things, and they have the whole nation kind of forced to make them profitable outside of commercial real estate because their commercial real estate crashed and it's a whole thing and people grew up. But bro, as we look at all this stuff, we have to wonder, is the United States losing its status as a superpower? And if so, how long until we are no longer in that conversation, or no longer asked to come to the G5, or no longer asked to rejoin NATO?
No, I don't know. I don't know if it'll get to that point just because of the military force that the United States has. But I don't know if it's a question at this point of if we do you think it's a question around the world on if we're a declining superpower?
It is definitely a question and a statement in other countries where we look at BRICS. They did not dare to do BRICS against the United States in 2013 or, during the dot-com rush. These guys would not dare to try to come together and go against the might of the United States, which we were debt-free during the dot-com bubble. There was no national debt. We were debt-free. We actually had a surplus. Clinton did so well in managing the nation's policies that we were in a surplus where we had additional money. And then right after that, we had George Bush Sr., who was like, ooh, a piggy bank. And he had a meaningless war. And then his son had a meaningless war. So it's been a thing. But to answer your question more directly, do I think this is like a 1 year thing that we fall out, or 2 year? Absolutely not. When you talk to some of the top economists in the world, they talk about the year 2040 and what that looks like. Because right now we have all the baby boomers retiring. They have the majority of retirement money. They have the majority of home ownership. They have the majority of business ownership. So these steady producers are going away. How do we transfer these assets in a way that keeps our nation strong? How do we do it in a way where we're not creating more debt for the nation? And then, because ideally, like I totally agree with you, at the end of the day, let's say the national debt is a crazy number and it's $60 trillion. Okay, we got these guns and we got these Abrams and we have these jets and we have a gigantic military force for sure. But the argument has always been, what happens when your economics are so bad that you cannot pay your military force to do its
Exactly.
job?
As a nation, we measure the wrong shit. You know what I mean? Like what the measurements that have traditionally defined if the US economy is healthy or not are the wrong metrics, period. It's been wrong for a very long time. You know, we look at the stock market, which when you look at the United States population and the percentage of the United States population that's actively involved in the stock market, it's no way that the stock market should be indicative of how we're doing as a nation. Like I get the economics of it, but the economic indicators are not what determines the strength of a nation. Like we've demonstrated it as a country, like in the world history, like the history of the world, there has never been a more prosperous nation than the United States in its current form. But does that speak to the lived experiences of the predominant population? No, it doesn't. So it's like we're looking at the stock market and engaging that as a measure of success. We're looking at the unemployment rate and looking at and gauging it as a measure of our success as a country. Like we've spoken about it on this program on quite a few occasions. We don't talk about the labor participation rate nearly enough. The amount of people that have just given up on trying to find a job altogether and they just sitting on the sideline just chilling. That is a measurement of our country and the success, you know, like any true metric. When we look at the percentage of our population that's homeless or underserved by because there's certain things that we have agreed as a human society that are just our unalienable rights, and we're not meeting the lowest threshold of standard for those that are at the lower thresholds of society. And like, how can that be a positive measurement for us as a nation? Like, how many people that are sick, how many people that are dying from preventable health situations? We don't measure the right shit. So since we continue to measure our success as a society on the wrong metrics, we're going to continue to have it wrong. Like it's going to continue to manifest in a whole bunch of ways that's just wrong because we're not measuring the right shit to begin with. So I don't ever intend to be the negative Nancy. I'd rather be the one that just I call it how I see it, and hopefully through enough of these types of real conversations, making it into the right rooms with the right consumers of the conversation, that it actually starts to have a profound shift. Like these conversations have to make it into the right rooms. There are a bunch of rooms. If we just look at Colorado Springs as a microcosm, because I've been having this conversation a little bit more recently than maybe in the past. No shortage of opportunity and all of the resources in Colorado Springs and El Paso County. It's just a matter of the right conversations making it into the right rooms. The the wrong conversations are happening in the right rooms every single day, and it has a detrimental effect on society at large. When the right conversations made into the right rooms, we start to see real change, like sustainable change. We start to measure the right shit. We start to move together as the people that God intends us to you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, brother, you talking that talk, bro. And I feel it so heavy. I've always been taught, especially in sales, you only keep in sales and in team building, you only keep that which you measure. And when we're talking about the measurables of the nation that are constantly thrown on the screen, it is mind blowing that we have all these statistics that don't relate to the common person. Like you said, talking about the stock market. Most of the time when we're talking about the stock market, we're talking about the S&P 500, we're talking about the Dow, or we're talking about the NASDAQ. Those are three of the biggest indices in the world, you know. And your common person has less than 10% of their worth in the stock market. And if they have more than 10, most of the time it's not liquid. So what does it mean if you can't extract your wealth or if you can't materialize your wealth? So it's over here in this pot of stocks, which may not be S&P 500 right now. You're up 30%. That's awesome. But how do you lock those in so that you get to build upon it the next year? That's something that your average person doesn't get to experience. And also, as a passive investor, it means you're taking on bad investments. So we've talked about SpaceX and how 2/3 of the company is phenomenal. It's cash flowing. It's scaling. We're talking about, 40% and 67% profitability. Those are really good numbers. And then we're talking about the other third that literally burns $1 billion every single month. And because most people are a passive investor, your 401k, your 529, your Coverdell plan, your mutual plans, there are so many different places, your IRA, your TSP, your TSA, that are forced into this cooperation because the NASDAQ decided to bring them in. So now your money is buying the options to be Elon's liquidity, to be able to get out. And you have no choice in it. You have absolutely no say in it if you have exposure to those other indices. And the other thing that I would love to bring up is CPI, Consumer Price Index. It has been shifted so many times, we should just call it something else. We should call it like the guilt-free card, because they will substitute different materials and call it the same.
Now, what does the Consumer Price Index measure?
It is supposed to measure the charting of staples in an American household. So corn, beef, bread, water, different things that you would have to live a normal life here in America. Now, what they have done, because many different, whether we're talking
but what is it measuring amongst those things, though? It's important to
so it's supposed to track inflation.
Right. But also in the context of when the common person is not purchasing those things, which are the essentials, they've been deemed as the essentials for a life worth living. When people are not purchasing those things, what does it say about our society? Like that's what the CPI piece measures from my perspective. What's your read on that?
That's great. And I love that perspective, and I should bring it back there more. My mind goes to the financial assets that I give people, because if I create a retirement plan with someone and it has an inflationary guard, it's normally based on CPI. So if someone, for example, if they need an annuity, because there's a point in time where you are not looking to accumulate more money. You are looking to get a return of that money, not on the money. The 75-year-old is not looking to get a 20% yield. The 75-year-old is looking to live a life where they're not worried about outliving their money and having it fit into their lifestyle. So there's a point where annuities make sense, where it's not all cash flowing assets like real estate or stocks and whatnot, which are businesses. You know, we said that many times on here, which are businesses. And the little CPI watch that's on there is tied to CPI, but CPI is not tied to the actual inflation that consumers feel. Because we were at a point where we were at like 27% inflation. And it's getting reported on the news that it's 9%. But you've just seen what you currently spend at the grocery store go up 33% in over a couple months. So it's not lining up, and it's because they're able to substitute things in CPI. For example, they'll compare the price of steak in 2015 to a low grade ground beef and say, oh, the price has not changed that much. It's only up 3.4%. We have a healthy economy. Well, you're comparing two completely different products, two different qualities of meat, and you're doing it so that when it comes to like Social Security, for example, you're not giving everyone in the nation on Social Security a pay bump. Or when it comes to the military, people that have their 100% disability, their 90%, their 85%, all of these people would also receive a larger pay bump, and they're guaranteed money because costs has exceeded the projection. So it's a little bit of a scandalous way to not pay that extra money to the consumer. And that's the way that I look at it. I love the eyes you have on it. If people aren't buying these things, what does it say about the health and the state of the nation? What does it say about the health and the state of people? And it brings me to, where I've seen people with really, really poor retirement planning. And that's where we see senior citizens eating dog and cat food. Like it breaks my heart, to see someone that didn't do the job the right way. So you have someone so in fear of outliving their money that they're resorting to that. And that's why I take what I do so seriously. And that's why I have no love, space, or grace for anyone that's not doing it with the utmost fiduciary obligation. Forget your paycheck, take care of the client first. You take care of clients the right way, you'll never, ever have a want for money. You do it the other way, you're going to have a want for money and a want for freedom, because I hope they lock your ass up.
Yes, bars, absolute fire. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. When I think about, wrapping up this client engagement that I just wrapped up, through all of the trials and tribulations of conforming to a system that I don't necessarily agree with all of the components of said system, the underlying priority of the client winning. If I, excuse me, because words matter, so I know if. When I know that my client is ultimately going to win because of what it is that we're talking about, I can set aside my personal inhibitions. I can set aside my personal reads on certain situations when I know that, again, in the grand scheme of things, the client is going to fucking win. And that has to be at the forefront of any of our audience that's listening to what it is that we are talking about each of these weeks. And the main thing, and all of us do the things that we do to serve as a certain constituency. There's overlap in those constituencies, and then there's just vast separation in those constituencies. But when we are intentional about serving our particular constituencies, what it takes to make sure that they get the highest scale of value has to remain the top priority at all times. And when it is lost for whatever reason, such is the brand itself and the ROI that comes back to our ecosystem collectively. Like, we have to be thinking bigger than self. And that's kind of how all of that stuff ties together. That said, when we kind of tie back to what got us here on this journey and what continues to keep us connected on this journey of providing the highest scale of value to our classmates, to be a continuing guiding light to us becoming our own greatest asset, while also maximizing the return for the various asset classes that are available to us. We are forever, will continue to be forever committed and appreciative of our collective audience that continues to rock and roll and take action upon the conversations that we have each week.
Dog, I couldn't agree more. And when we start hitting them upside the head with these live episodes, y'all, we got some stuff that's coming down the road. We got some guests that you wouldn't believe that are building things that you didn't imagine. Otherwise, we would have had you on the show. It's so much good coming down the road. So we appreciate you all so much for being here on this journey with us while you're on your journey of building your own wealth. And health is wealth. So I appreciate my brother Jesse so much, starting the episode off right.
And closing it even better. So this has been my man Earl.
My boy Jesse.
It's been the Asset Class. Thank you for listening.